With me, I have the president of COP27, who is going to speak to us about this important milestone in terms of Africa hosting COP27. Good morning, Your Excellency. Quite an important gathering on the continent, and Egypt ensuring that we really are able to deliver as a continent.
We are very happy to host COP27 on the African continent as a demonstration of the importance that the African countries place to climate change. Certainly, Africa has not been responsible for the crisis that the world is facing. Its contribution to global emissions is not exceeding 4%, and the effects that are devastating to many of the African countries necessitate that Africa's voice has to be heard, has to be elevated, and that its aspirations and the challenges it faces should be dealt with in solidarity with the international community. We are confident that the high representation at the summit level that was demonstrated by the leaders of Africa who participated in the thematic roundtables, presidential thematic roundtables, gave an opportunity for Africa's voice, Africa's demands, and Africa's aspirations to be held. Africa represents a quarter of the parties to the COP process, and its delegation has spoken with one voice, a voice of solidarity, the voice of recognition of its responsibility, but also the need that the resources are provided to Africa in finance, in the transfer of technology, and in meeting the adaptation requirements for Africa to deal with the consequences of climate change.
Since we have arrived here at COP, can you briefly tell us what have we achieved in terms of the agreements? I know there are sticky points.
Well, we are concentrating on all of the priority issues related to mitigation, adaptation, finance, and of course the introduction of the agenda item loss and damage after 27 years of discussion is a positive development. But we certainly need to see the outcomes of the deliberations of the parties, the agreements that will be formulated, and we hope that the political will that was demonstrated at the level segment of the COP, where all of the world leaders spoke about the need to deal with this crisis collectively and to recognize that the resources have to be available so that countries, especially in the developing world, especially in Africa, can do more in terms of mitigation and also address adaptation where they are subject to the devastating consequences of climate change. We, of course, are at the final stages of deliberations, and we hope that the negotiators will raise to the occasion and demonstrate the flexibility and the responsiveness to the needs of many in the developing world, and provide this COP as a way forward and maintain the momentum that was generated in both Paris and Glasgow.
The issue of financing of loss and damages has been a thorny one. What is your view? How can negotiators handle this issue? Are you optimistic that we are likely to see a resolution or an agreement on loss and damages? Yesterday, the European Union made an announcement of 1 billion to loss and damages fund. But it looks like the G7 in particular, or the developed countries, are reluctant to put money on the table to address loss and damages.
Well, in our capacity as President, we take an objective and impartial position and depend on encouraging all of the parties to address the matter in a flexible way that takes into account the needs of the parties, so that they can undertake the responsibilities and can provide for their citizens the necessary protections against the consequences. We are encouraging all to show the flexibility and accommodation and the recognition of the importance of the issue of loss and damage. What will be decided and the outcome is, again, incumbent upon the parties to be able to reach a point of convergence, of consensus that provides the trust and the confidence that this process is a process of a path forward, one that recognizes the needs and the interests of all parties, especially those most vulnerable.
And finally, as we wrap up this discussion, and just a day before the end of the conference, what is your message to Africans in particular who are watching what is happening here in Egypt?
Well, African solidarity has always been the main focus of what we all do. We can only achieve our objectives and the aspirations of our people and provide sustainable development through our cooperation, through our interdependency, through our complementarity. And thereby, always, when Africa stands together, it can achieve its aspirations, it can achieve its goals, and the issues are not insurmountable. As long as we speak with one voice as Africans, I'm sure the world will listen and will listen attentively.
Thank you so much. That was the president of COP27 here in Egypt, very optimistic that this gathering will be successful, particularly in relation to the solidarity of Africans and also addressing the issues that are related to climate change that are a challenge to many countries, particularly the Sub-Sahara and generally the African continent and other developing nations around the world.